All right, I'm going to try this again for, I don't know, the umpteenth whatever time here. Truth be told, I did a take of this earlier in the evening, so this is actually going to be like I think a lot of unboxings are on YouTube, and that is fake. I'm going to, I don't know one way or another, but I'm going to open the envelope and I will do my best to act surprised. And what I have in here, the contents therein, is the 2004-2005 projection set or speculation set for Hockey Bones for the season that never was, as Mr. Aloha over on the PT Games forum over on Delphi calls his replay project with these cards. What I'm going to do, as I announced earlier in another video, is what I'm calling tentatively, probably will keep the same name, the Fictional Six League. And I'm just going to redraft the league and basically stack 6 teams. It'll be like all-star game after all-star game, though hopefully some intriguing matchups therein and hopefully some interesting storylines will develop from that. But anyway, so these are the 2004-2005 cards here for Hockey Bones. And yeah, it starts out with the goaltenders, and this I think is just supposed to be a test page, so I'm hoping I find, I've gone through some but not all of them. I'm hoping that I will find this buried in the set somewhere. And I'm going to try to limit it to just talking about one player per page. That's what I thought I'd do, is go through them, look at them, and talk about some of them, because there are 88 pages here, and so if I talk about as many players as I have done in some of the previous takes, and it's just going to make the video way too long. And so you have like Roberto Luongo here, Florida's starting goaltender at the time. But of course, it's really nice to see the likes of Jamie McLennan, Marty Turco, Dwayne Rollison as well, who would figure big, not in, well, basically in the season to follow when he made his way over to Edmonton. On this page here, I see a pre-con Smythe Cam Ward and David Abisher, who was supposed to succeed Patrick Waugh, but he and also Mark Denis here is playing in Columbus in this one. They never, I mean, how do you follow up Patrick Waugh, right? How do you succeed Patrick Waugh, right? You know, does one ever. Anyway, Carrie Letten, stylistically one of my favorite goaltenders of the era. Ole, the goalie, of course, there for Washington. UC Markkinen, who was a Habs fan. I like him Markkinen to Dustin Tokarski. That was about 8 to 10 years before Tokarski's time, if you know what I'm talking about with... well, I guess I'll explain it here briefly, with Rollison being injured in Game 1 there of a 7-game series, and Markkinen ended up getting them into Game 7 like Tokarski did Montreal and New York in 2014. But anyway, let's move on from painful memories. Mika Kippersov there, Kipper, and the season before he was kind of playing in Nabokov or Nabokov, depending on what video game you're playing or what network you're listening to, in the shadow of this guy. Toskala, of course, would also emerge from that shadow later on, figure into a bit of the Toronto Maple Leafs story. You have Marty Broder here, the Dominator. Ray Emery, how am I only going to talk about one name per page? Roman Turek there also in the Boulan Wall. Basically, I just have to talk less about each one. You got Jiggy, Robert Esch, good name I haven't heard for a while. Roman Czechmanic there, and Niedermeyer. Some of the, the successors to Ron Hextall that never ended up being quite that. Now they're trying it with Carter Hart in Philadelphia. Are really wet behind the ears. Marc-Andre Fleury, freshly drafted. Ryan Miller, of course, they're still with Buffalo. Mika Noren, also with Buffalo, actually. I guess would have been a goaltending prospect at the time. And Marty Biron, who still works with Buffalo. On their network, the MSG network there. Theodore was still in Montreal then. Huet was on his way. Rick DiPietro, who I think is only under contract for another 260 years still, give or take a few years. Of course, Jocelyn Thibault as well, Eddie Belfour. Craig Anderson, kind of one of my favorites for a while. And he actually only had, I mean, of course, these are all speculative numbers. If I didn't say it off the top, again, I have done multiple takes of this. I think, again, for what it's worth, I think that it's really good that these hypothetical or imagined numbers are there for the teams and for the players. For the players, I guess I'm saying, and for the goalies. I'm probably going to just kind of ignore these or overlook these. When I do the draft, what I'm going to do is use the 2003-2004 season to inform that, and just try to draft 6 equally strong teams that should all be very strong. And what I like about this, so I see Manny Legacy here, and I was reading up a bit on 2003-2004 again earlier, just trying to brush up. And what Detroit did that season actually was they lured Hasek out of retirement, and they got Cujo as well over from Toronto. They lured him over, and then Manny Legacy ended up kind of superseding them both come playoff time. You have Willie Mitchell, of course, coach Los Angeles, great defenseman for Vancouver, actually, a handful of years after that figured into their runs. Let me see him at 5 minutes. Marian Gaborik. Alexander Daigle, multiple 20-goal seasons. Yes, I guess as a number one, you could use a number one overall. I mean, draft pick, you could use that four-letter B word, a bust. But I mean, how many players, even players that make it to the NHL, enjoy multiple 20-goal seasons? So, Dag, I mean, I suppose he was never the Joe Sakic, the second coming of Sakic type that he was projected to be obviously, but not entirely useless. Brian Rolston there, good longs. Andrew Brunette and Vermette, who just seemed to play on just about every team and figured into some early expansion drafts and stuff like that of the era. And let's see, there you have Saku Koivu's brother, Mikko, Jody Shelley, Manny Malhotra, Montreal alumni. The Montreal alumni, they're going to stand out to me a little bit more, maybe than some other players. Luke Richardson, who now works with Montreal and works with the defense. And you have Mark Savard, what might have been, right? A Matt Cook incident, one of a few of them that really sort of derailed and shortened his career. And it's a shame. Really good offensive player. And I have a lot of respect for players who put up respectable offensive numbers in this era when doing so is really challenging things. So, I looked at someone like Savard and obviously Ilya Kovalchuk there. Kaimo Timonen, good defenseman. Dan Hamhuis, apparently a really good defenseman in that era. Good clearing rating as well there for Hamhuis. And Steve Sullivan there as well. These are the Nashville cards. Scotty Upshaw. Some Team Canada, some World Juniors alumni there with Tutu and Scotty Upshaw. Radim Verbata, shot production extraordinaire there for a season or so. Eric Cole, a handful of years after that, would figure into Montreal's picture. Had a really outstanding kind of a career year, actually, for the Habs, did Cole. And Jeff O'Neill there, of course, O-Dog. Pavel Brendel, I remember Bobby Clark basically, I think, regarded him as being like the second coming of Pavel Bure, sharing the same first name, and it just never... I'm trying to remember, actually, if Philadelphia ever acquired Brendel when Clark was the GM. Anyway, he never really... I guess never got going. He's projected to get 9 goals in this season, though. Moving on, Legwand there, drafted behind Vinny Lecavalier in his draft year. Lecavalier should also be in here somewhere. There's Shane Doan with Phoenix. Mike Johnson, really good color commentary if you watch TSN. I really like, actually, my favorite Montreal games are when Brian Mudrick does the play-by-play and Mike Johnson does color. Rob Brindamore, and if you want to know if you're new to hockey and you want to know, you see Brindamore at Carolina's bench, you want to know how he played. Basically a composite of Carolina's 12, their dozen forwards on any given night, because he really, I think, really gets it out of every guy. Certainly every player up front, he gets them kind of playing his system, his style of play, his 200-foot game. Let's see here. Paul Mara, he figured into Montreal there for a few games as a veteran, had a cup of coffee with the Canadians. Tyson Nash, of course, doing color now and or between the glass with the Arizona Coyotes. I almost said Phoenix. And now, we're into the Colorado Cards with Blake and Foote there, kind of the big two for the Avalanche. Alex Tanguay got the game-winning goal there in 2001. Halifax and Mooseheads alumni as well. Alex Tanguay. I remember, actually, I don't have very vivid dreams about a whole lot of NHL games, but I remember Game 7 that year, the Colorado-New Jersey Stanley Cup Final. In my dream, it was 3-0 Colorado, and then a goal was scored in the third period, and I woke up before sort of realizing who, and then the 3-1, and that was the night before the Game 7, and the final score in Game 7, I believe, in 2001 was 3-1, Tanguay again with the game winner, and I think Colorado did get up 3 on them, and then New Jersey trying to battle back, they managed one, but no more. Anthony Stewart, of course, now he's working with Sportsnet. It's interesting looking like 15, 16 years. So the only players from this set, and there are a few of them that are still active in the NHL in 2021, would have been, pops barely out of the draft at this point. Now, of course, they're the grisly old gatekeepers of the NHL. Gatekeepers like Dan Foose would have been actually in 2004, 2005, having amassed over 1,000 points, despite never having a single 100-point season to his credit. Chris Gratton, 3rd overall in a real fantastic draft. I remember he came just behind Chris Pronger. And then it was, Paul Kariya, Rob Niedermeyer. And, goodness, I'm blanking on who... Dag. That was the year Dag was drafted. Never mind. Okay. Zhamnov, of course, he got to play with Teemu Selanne in their heyday in Winnipeg. Olli Jokinen there, really good player in his prime for Florida. Jay Bouwmeester there. Still a Florida Panther. Pierre Turgeon, Montreal alumni. And let's see here. You got Philippe Boucher. Wow. staunch defense there, solid defense, and Sergei Zubov. Don Sweeney surprised me a little bit because I have taken a bit of a look through these already, that he was still playing hockey in 2000, that he was, still could have been playing hockey then, I guess. Yuri Lettinen. Of course, this locked-out year, I mean, this really ended some careers, just because by the time the NHL resumed, some of these guys, I think of someone like Brett Hull, that he just spent too much time off ice. Chris Kunitz, of course, the Stanley Silver magnet there for a little while he was. Andy McDonald, I remember him playing for Team Canada in the World Championships, where it seemed like we could just get nobody to come and play for us. I'll stop short of that and not get too opinionated like I did in an earlier take about that. Of course, you have Mike Modano there as well. Peter Sikora, I remember actually reading about him when he was on his way up. I want to say like 12, 13, 14 years old. He was actually projected to be like a Gretzky-esque or Yzerman-esque superstar in the time of his youth, as was Sergei Samsonov. But I mean, you never know when it's that many years ahead. Dave Andreychuk, there's a good long stand. And Marty St. Louis, my goodness. Andreychuk, St. Louis. Tampa alumni. Modine was bit of a destroyer then. Corey Stillman. Fedorov with his cup of coffee there in Anaheim. Ruslan Slay. I remember actually he was a Curtis Joseph recommendation. I want to say Joseph. Somebody recommended that Anaheim draft him. He was really not really regarded at all at the time. You have Alfie there with Ottawa as well. Peter Bondra. So before there was Alexander Ovechkin in Washington, actually Peter Bondra playing in Ottawa there, but Bondra kind of like through the 90s and early 2000s was, I mean, he never got to the level of an Ovi. I mean, really, who has only a handful of guys, and Ovi's in the conversation to be as good or better than all of them as a pure goal scorer. Sorry if you don't like that I've spoken the truth there. The downvote button's just over here. Anyway, like I said, I'm gonna have to try not to get too opinionated here about certain things, but anyway, Bondra was a real sniper for Washington. Me growing up watching hockey, he was Washington's go-to. Anyway, Vinny Lecavalier there. Jonathan Chichu, and this was just before Thornton came over to San Jose, and Chichu scored 56 goals. Again, going through 2003, 2004 earlier. Pretty solid offensively, actually, in the 03-04 campaign, but obviously not, he just on his way to that mountain of a season that he would eventually have. Dan Boyle was a good defenseman for a long time. Goodness me, I'm a holic. Jason Spetz, I remember actually taking a lot of hot water, taking him in a Yahoo fantasy draft one fall. I think it was just after this, actually, because he did really good in the AHL during the lockout year, and I just kind of figured, I'd watched him play in the World Juniors and everything. I thought he was going to be a pretty good NHLer. Ended up being right, and I think he even did pretty good that year that, again, I took a lot of heck for drafting him when and where I did. Chris Phillips, number 1 overall in one of the more forgettable drafts. Zadino Cherub, I got to be careful. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. In terms of just pure defensive play, and I know, obviously he had the size and the reach that didn't hurt, but I really do think prime Zdeno Chara, just give up and go home when he's on defense. Best maybe defensive defenseman who also had some offensive acumen. Here projected for 15 goals and 42 points that I've seen in my lifetime. He just seems so hard to play against. Although I will say, there is someone not too far ahead here that I think would rival him in terms of really good defensemen. There's Patrick Marlow, who just a couple of games or so ago passed Gordie Howe for most games played all time. Marlow there, so yeah, playing even then. And let's see here, Scott Hannon, good defensive, good shutdown guy in his day. There we are, Scott Niedermeyer. I call him the clairvoyant because he would just show up. You'd be like, how did he even get to that area of the ice? He was so fast, just click, click, go. Nils Ekman, when I was looking at some things earlier, I'd kind of forgotten about him. He played on that line with Thornton and Chichu there for a little while and put up some good 20-plus goal, 50-plus point offensive seasons, a couple of them for San Jose. And remember, too, that in this era, if you were a 20-goal scorer, you would have been a 30-plus goal scorer in some other eras. If you averaged a point per game, you were definitely a 100-plus point player in some other eras. So, I'll stop short of that. Thinking of Marco Sturm because, again, over at the PT Games Forum over in Delphi, he's off to a good start there in Mr. Aloha, a.k.a. Larry's season. Brian Rafalski, good offensive defenseman anyway in his day. Again, the aforementioned Niedermeyer as well. The two of them there still playing with New Jersey. Remember Dean McCammond actually being a blue-chip prospect at one point. Langenbrunner, he had good staying power. How could one not like Brian Giunta? Especially as a Habs fan, and the way that he could Joe Frazier or Alex Ovechkin to the ice. Habs had a few short guys with good low center of gravity actually that would do that to some of the bigger guys. Francois Bouillon was good at that too in his time. Jeff Friesen there for New Jersey. And let's see here. Goodness, my Commodore, Stephen Reinprecht, Iggy. Wow. Okay. And again, I'm trying to think ahead a little bit because there's only going to be about a fifth of these players that will actually play in the league that I'm going to do. It'll just be, the most top flight players. Patrick Ilyasia, I've said this before, I think in other videos, but someone who I think if he had played in any other era would have been just known more as an outstanding offensive star. Probably also playing in New Jersey during the Lamoriello era. Didn't help his cause there. Okay, goalless Gomez. Yeah, I'm not going there. Georges Larac, there's Montreal alumni as well. Elish Hemsky, I feel bad. He was damaged goods by the time he arrived in Montreal. I feel even bad using a term like damaged goods, but anyway, just trying to be nice. Wow. Robin Regier, my goodness. Scott Hannon and then some, evidently. Goodness, Marty Reisner. Eric Brewer. Remember, he was just a kid and he came over and played for Team Canada in the Olympics in 2002. And wow, okay, Marc-Andre Bergeron as well. Schneider, who actually figured his way back into Montreal there late in his career for a cup of coffee. I've probably overused that term here already. Thomas Fleischman as well. I remember him being a good PTA and had a solid season with the Habs. Alex Ovechkin, of course. Ovechkin, who, if you look at his KHL numbers, actually, it's really a testament to scouting that they knew that even with limited ice time, I mean, I guess they would have seen what he would have done, his ascension as a junior or whatever, but and I mean, he was only 18, 19 years old, so he was playing in their system in the KHL. But if you look at his numbers, I guess what I'm trying to say here, actually his KHL numbers are pretty mediocre prior to his coming over to the NHL. So, I guess they just knew that on the NHL ice surface, he would explode, just being the type of player that he was. Roman Hamrlik there, another first overall draft pick. Jason Blake. Aaron Asham, Marcus Naslund. So what I said about Ilias earlier, I think of Naslund too, and I think of somebody who maybe in another era would have been maybe a more outstanding and well-remembered offensive star. I mean, sure, if you're a Canucks fan, I guess you'd still remember him and Bertuzzi for a variety of reasons, perhaps ranging good and bad. And where's Brenda Morrison, actually? Because he would have played in what I'd like to think of as the center of heaven. He had sort of the Steve Ruchin role there in Vancouver for a little while. Of course, Ruchin had it between Korea and Teemu Selanne in Anaheim. Michael Pekka, very solid, outstanding player in his day, two-way forward. There's Brenda Morrison there for Vancouver. Pekka there with the New York Islanders. Yeah, Brent Sokol and Ryan Kessler. Wow, Sammy Salo, Jovo Kopp there, Ed Jovanovski, solid defenseman in his era. Trevor Linden. Okay. With the Canucks. So anyway, again, I don't want this to go on as long. I mean, this is the reason actually why I didn't upload the previous take. So this one's almost as long, but I have actually gotten through more cards. The other one was interrupted by the pizza delivery. So Keith DeChuck and would Kevin Bieksa be in by this point? Pavel Dimitra, and that's a really sad story. It's a tragedy. I know he wasn't the only one on the plane, but the fact that his team and the name of the KHL team escapes me right now, but he again, somebody who, had he played in another era, again, I really do have a reverence for these players who could put up good numbers in sort of the dead puck era of hockey that this was. Might even have to tweak the game a little bit so that we get some higher scoring games there. Recchi projected to have a respectable 65 points there in 2004. I mean, he did have staying power as an offensive star, but then, of course, he figured into the picture in 2006 in Carolina. Chris Pronger, who he would just hook and hack over and over till the referees got tired of calling him. His words, actually. Not verbatim, but I'm paraphrasing him. Evgeny Malkin, so his card's in here as well. That's kind of cool. Of course, before he'd actually officially played an NHL game. Rick Jackman, who played in Korea for a while, and of course, there he is, Mario Lemieux. Yeah, projected to have 58 points in 60 games. It's hard to see Lemieux. It's hard to envision him as below a point per game player. And mind you, I'm not questioning, I'm not criticizing how these numbers were arrived at all. I'm aware that probably what was used here was some combination that would have included, a complex system or algorithm or whatever to generate these. But it's hard to imagine Lemieux as below a point per game player. That being said, I do think in his final partial season there trying to play with Sid the Kid, I think he had something like 23 points in 26 games before he bowed out, so like just below that. I could be off there by a number. Again, yeah, Rick Jackman, he did play in Korea for a little while. I actually saw him play live. He looked kind of lost out there playing over here with the Anyang Hala. Weird game. Weird games, some of those were. Anyway, that could be a story for another video. Actually, why I don't go to Hall of Games anymore. Jeremy Roenick, Mike Richards, yeah, Keith Primo, wow, Simon Gagne. Again, just trying to think about who could actually play. Lubomir Vishnevsky, always had a hard time saying his name. There's always going to be a few. Grebishkov. Alexander Frolov there, Martin Straka, Matthew Dandino played some time for Montreal. Chris Chelios, technically my first favorite hockey player, just because when you're a 5-year-old boy, it's fun to say Chris Chelios. It sounds almost like Cheerios, and once I found out that Rocket Richard was retired and I needed an active hockey player to call my favorite, Chelios was there, number 24 for Montreal. Henrik Zetterberg, he'll probably, find his way into it. Veteran Brendan Shanahan, I don't know, again, like once these guys come off the pages and they start getting assigned to the respective teams, it's hard to say who will be in and who will be out. I'll say one thing, though, it will be a pretty talented, like, free agent pool. You could argue that I could probably put together a 7th team that could beat the 6 teams that I put together. There's Ty Domi, there's Owen Nolan, Eric Lindros. Goodness, Toronto had a lot of veteran names going into that season. Stevie Y, wow, that's right too. Stevie Y still playing for Detroit. I remember watching his retirement ceremony in, goodness, that would have been going into the actual ceremony, I think, was in the winter of 2007. Nick Lindstrom, what can you say? One of the best ever, Nick Lindstrom. Yager, defensively limited, but he had some decent seasons. One outstanding one for the Rangers there in the 2000s. Bit of a resurgence after his time in Washington. Of course, you have Matt Sundin. Man, Sundin was some fun to watch back in his day as well, especially in international tournaments. Really, it's you'd be doing yourself the opposite of a disservice. You'd be doing yourself justice to go and watch some of Sundin representing Team Sweden in some international and best-on-best tournaments. Peter Forsberg gets a lot of talk, but man, Sundin could be a monster in the yellow uniform, the yellow and blue. Let's see here, Fedor Tutin. It's always a fun name. Some fun names here, good mix of names. Veteran Brian Leach there by the time that he headed over to Toronto, though he's projected to have 54 points here in this one. I will say, now that I've looked at them enough, it is kind of fun. I'm going to try to put them out of sight and out of mind when I do the draft itself. Still, I will. But it's fun to look at them, actually, now that I've seen enough of them. For the time being, I seem to be drawn to them. Ziggy Palffy there. Nigel Dawes, Kyle Calder, Eric Dagier, and Rene Bourque. Of course, he came over to Montreal for a little while, a handful of years after. So anyway, Mark Messier, again, I could be, hopefully if I'm boring you to tears with this, you're not still listening, expecting it. This is basically what I thought I'd do. I'd just kind of go through all the pages, mention a name or two, and just kind of show the set of cards here, this projection set, which though I paid maybe a little more than I thought I would to print it, to have them printed earlier today, it's because, again, I think what it is, I'm just not used to printing 88 pages all at once. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll pay it. And then when I was told what it was, I still paid it, obviously, right away without hesitation. But it was kind of, bit of a double take there when I heard the exact amount. Anyway, Anson Carter, who can be seen now on NBC. Scott Young, veteran Scott Young there. Jason Cullymore. I remember also some of these guys, I remember when they were highly regarded prospects, either in junior or in AHL. For some, yes, He would have been my favorite player actually at the time. Michael Ryder, there he is. And it's funny now I see Tyler Toffoli 73. Ryder for a little while he basically Toffoli and Ryder because the number 73 and they don't look alike, but yet when they're wearing a helmet and Ryder, especially during at least one season where he's kind of let his hair grow out into a bit of a shag, really they look a lot alike. I'd be surprised actually if somebody else hasn't already caught on to this and has something on because everything's in the internet if you go looking for it. So somebody's probably already pointed out the Ryder to Foley thing. Now when I'm watching Habs games, I almost like I want to say Ryder, when I see Toffoli. Michael Ryder, again, he was my favorite player then. Joe Thornton, Patrice Bergeron, and Alexey Kovalev from Montreal. And it would have been probably about 2007. Yeah, it was the 07-08 season that he really went on a veteran's tear there. Gonchar with Boston. Wow. Hal Gill with Boston, for that matter. Again, he'd come over a handful of seasons later for Montreal. There's Breezewell. Speaking of Montreal now, getting into the Habs cards here. Good buddy of mine always called him Steve Begin. Steve Bejan. Richard Zednik. Oh man, for a fleeting moment, for like a shooting star of a time there. Quite the offensive star there for the Habs. Good old Carl Dykhouse, great Chicago prospect. I forgot Ron Haynes. He was even with Montreal. It's funny, like certain players, like I think of Haynesy more as like a Maple Leaf or maybe even a Columbus Blue Jacket. And of course, Marcel Hossa, because we couldn't have Marian Hossa, just like we have Valerie Bure instead of Pavel Bure. And I know there's another name or two, an example of that I'm overlooking here, forgetting at the moment. Sheldon Surrey, of course, also there for Montreal. Christopher Higgins, maybe projected to play a shortened campaign in that one. Craig Rivet. It's funny actually how good of a defenseman that he became, because I remember vividly actually as a kid, one of his first NHL games, he looked so awful in that game. And I remember even mocking him the next day with some friends, just playing some casual ball hockey or whatever in the driveway, and just like, you'd shank it and, oh, I'm Rive, kid stuff. Oh dear. But I mean, he rounded into, a good hockey player, really good defenseman. Bouillon, again, another one of my favorites there after Ryder, for Montreal back in his day. So there you have it. I mean, that's 88 pages. And now it's time for me to take this to them, and in the meantime too, actually it's going to be a great opportunity for me to listen to and catch up on some content as I'm going through. Might even listen to a hockey game as well actually while I'm doing this. So remains to be seen. I might even look at some of the pages, and if I don't think that any of those players are going to make it into the draft, then I don't know. I might not cut that page up right away. It's going to be hard, though. I think on every page here, you could probably argue at least one or two players for draft consideration. Again, what I'm going to do is condense what was then a 30-team NHL down to 6 teams. Anyway, I see this is now approaching 28 minutes, so might as well sign off for the time being. And any time that you give to this, any consideration that you give to this channel, well, it's never expected. It's always appreciated. And cheers, thanks, and bye for now. Good night.